Some months ago, by that I mean one, I got this video on my YouTube page and figured I hadn't done a jam in a while, so I called up my audio guy and he said, why not? Then I called up our artist and she didn't want to. We had technically done a jam without her before, but the visuals looked about like you'd imagine. So I went to the team funding channel. We stumbled upon a post by Orms, who was looking for a team, but he had already found someone. But that person was also a programmer using Godot, and they were looking for another programmer and someone to take care of the audio. So the team consists of Orms, who's doing the pixel art, Art, who's a programmer using Godot, Terminus, who can do pretty much anything on the audio side, except composing, and me, Snarg, as the second programmer. We played some Risk of Rain 2 to break the ice and decided to meet up in time for the jam. 1 month passes. It is now the first day of the jam. 3 people are late. But not by much, so we're fine. Logically, the first thing we did was a brainstorming session. Terminus didn't have any ideas. I had a couple of concepts, and Art wanted to make balls with physics, but that game already exists, so that's off the table. Arms proposed a gear-based tower defense game. We all liked the idea, and after fleshing it out, arrived at the following concept. The game would resemble a typical tower defense game in general design and structure, but with the twist that you have to manually power your buildings by connecting them to a power source. You do this by building gears. There's also this special kind of gear, we call these origins, that the player must spin to power all connected gears. That's the spinning part of the theme done, but we still needed to make it serious and professional. The setting we came up with involves the player working at the titular job factory. Your task is to suck these clowns dry of joy and whimsy and silly stuff like that so that they can take an honest profession like accounting or day trading or something. With the concept done, it was time to get going on the implementation. I added a system to have clowns follow predefined lanes and Art began work on the gear mechanics. As it became more and more apparent that we were going to be using time maps, we shifted from a collision-based approach to a tile-based one that was much simpler to implement. We got done adding this system early into day 2. This also includes placement, deletion, power propagation, and animation. Sets of connected gears are tracked using a combination of hash maps and arrays, and updated only when gears are placed or removed. Because most of the operations we needed to perform are more on a per set basis anyway, this makes all that code pretty efficient, which is nice. Also, there's a couple rules for placing gears. Firstly, you cannot connect 2 origin gears. The other rule is that sets of gears are not allowed to be cyclical. I think this is slightly stricter than it needs to be to guarantee that the animations line up correctly, but it makes the system very simple on the implementation and mechanics side. To determine the spinning direction of a gear, you just imagine a chessboard, where all the black tiles spin clockwise and all the white ones counterclockwise, and that's it. The gears are always moved in a way that would actually work. On day 2, we also implemented the first 2 towers. The first was your basic projectile turret, and the second one deals damage in an AoE. We also got some less flashy stuff done, like a money system, object pooling for troopers, and some game structure code. Then I began blocking out the UI, which I added the logic for on day 3. Art implemented the player character, and Arms finished work on a bunch of sprites for basically everything we had in the game at that point, so we added those in as well. On the same note, Terminus got some sound effects down, and I wrote this global audio manager to play them. Also, because the sprite for the AoE tower is a speaker, we came up with a bunch of lines for them to say. Some of them are fully original, others are inspired by actual business slogans from Pinterest. One of them is completely unaltered. Leave your guess in the comments! On day 4 we finished up tower placement, so you can now rotate them, and also there's a little indicator that shows you where you can and can't place buildings. Art updated the clown spawner to support multiple lanes, because we noticed that the speaker tower could very easily shut down a whole lane by itself. Also, it just allows for more interesting layouts. Orms updated the time map visuals and added animations for the player character, alongside a clown nose sprite, which represents money. I then added an animation for them to juice up the game a bit, and added a marker to visualize enemy paths in the build phase. On day 5, Art didn't have much time to work on the game, but on the bright side I finally got around to fixing the problem with the grayscale shader I made a couple of days ago. Godot fun fact: when a shader is applied to an animated sprite 2D, you actually press the UV coordinates on the sprite sheet rather than where you are on the sprite. Very cool. Anyway, this shader basically acts as a health bar for enemies. It's super simple, but I'm pretty happy with how the effect turned out. Also, I slightly expanded the pathing system to support loops to open up more possibilities for level design, and I added 2 new towers. The piercer is basically an upgrade to the TIE shooter with a stronger but slower piercing shot. The other one spawns books that stun clowns that run into them. Also, the noses are now positioned correctly, so that's cool. Terminus finally opened up the audio vault on day 6, so we just had a billion sound effects put in the game, some of which were for a new type of enemy. Jumbos are really just much bigger and slower clowns, but they also drop more money. Speaking of money, we reworked the wave spawning system. The old system would adjust the spawn cooldown of enemies based on the current point on a tension curve, but in practice this made it pretty difficult to control the amount of enemies spawned. The new one instead uses a credit system where each enemy type is weighed differently based on impact. Also, Alms made a whole lot of sprites for the UI, jumbos, and the clown cars they spawn at. By day 7 we kind of got into that stage of the jam where the game is mostly done and you're just finishing up 100 little things in every department. We did a lot, but most of it isn't really all that notable. Alt did some level design work and I fixed a web specific issue with the grayscale shader. Also, we added a death effect to the clowns. Originally the plan was to have them transform into businessmen and run down the lane once at 100% seriousness, but Orms understandably didn't want to animate that. We set it on this Pokemon teleport type animation that they feels really good. And also they're spinning. On day 8, the last proper day, I got to work on the interactive tutorial. The in-law explanation for all the messages and hints is that you have a coworker whose webcam is in the bottom right on a little screen. Art later added in the portraits Orms made, and also animated them. Also, we finally got around to adding in real stats for the enemies and towers. Following that we did some level design, but I'm a busy guy, so I had places to be and business meetings to attend and stuff like that. In the meantime, Art added a bunch of particle effects, fixed a subtle bug with how we were using object pooling, and pretty much finished up the game with some more tweaks and actual levels. When I got back it was pretty late, so Orms and Art were already off. I applied some finishing touches, including hiding a permanently visible debug label, and published the game. All of the levels in the final game ended up being Art's doing. I didn't want to add my own because we had pretty different design styles, although I do wish I could have incorporated some more ideas. In particular, I was really excited about the concept of using the gear placement mechanics to create a kind of lock, where you need to choose between occupying two parts of the same level. All in all though, I'm extremely satisfied with how the game turned out. This is by far the most confident I've ever felt in a jam game, and was a lot of fun to make. As of writing this, the game hasn't taken off or anything, but the people who did play it really seem to enjoy their time, which is always nice to see. It's a game jam, so it was definitely a lot of work, but I'm really happy to have participated. Thanks to anyone who played our game, thanks to you for watching, and also thanks to Juniper for hosting the game jam. Okay, bye.
Go play the game. If you dare.